How's it going, guys? This is Lino right here again at Texas Made Welding Academy. Today we're going to go over how to position your rod angle, and your amperage on a 2G position overlay. If you guys are having a little bit of trouble at home, this video is for you. So let's go check it out.
Stop it!
All right, guys, we're gonna do our first bead. We're gonna do a stitch motion, pretty much just back and forth. Keep your rod real close to your puddle. You don't want to step away from your puddle, and you don't want to go too fast. Make sure you're going slow and steady. We're gonna show you guys how to run it, and hopefully we get some better arc shots. So right here, we're just doing a stitch motion, going back and forth. If you notice, I'm not stepping away from my puddle. I'm doing a nice, steady, slow movement with my rod. Make sure you keep your rod close to your plate, but you don't want to be stabbing at your plate. Just let it float on that plate. All right, guys, so if you're trying to overlay your next weld, overlay with your previous weld, make sure your center of your rod is right on this line, okay? We're gonna run our next one right here, but you wanna make sure they overlap with each other. You don't wanna have a valley in between those two welds, okay? So just pay attention. If you look at the rod, it will right on that line. The center of your rod is right on that line. Same type movement, slow, steady movement. Make sure your movement is on your wrist. Make sure your body position is correct. Always double check. All right, guys, so we showed you how to run it properly for you to get a good overlay with your previous welds. So once you start stacking them. Now our next one, we're gonna show you guys how it looks when you drop your rod a little bit too low and you overlap them too much, okay? So be careful with that. So right here, if you pay attention, we have our rod way too low. We're under that edge of that previous weld. If you look at that edge of that weld that we just did earlier, look at where our rod placement is at. Our rod is way too low. We're keeping the same nice steady movement, the stitch movement, but we're just too low. We're overlapping way too much. All right, guys, so we have a good weld right here. It's just if you pay attention to it, right under this weld is our previous weld. We just overlapped it a little bit too much, okay? Why? We didn't follow this line. We didn't have our rod right on the center of this line. We went a little bit under it, so that's what pretty much caused our weld to sag down. What will do that is either you're going too low, you're bringing your rod too low, or you're going a little bit too slow. So sometimes when you're going too slow, you're stacking up a lot of metal, and that'll make your weld sag down, or your rod angle. Make sure you always have the correct rod angle. All right, guys, so now in this bead, we're gonna show you how it looks when your rod is too far away from your previous weld, and that'll pretty much be called when you leave a wagon tread or a valley in between your two welds. So that's when your weld doesn't overlap with your previous one. Let's go ahead and run it. So if you pay attention right here on this one, If you look at a bottom of a rod, if you look at the bottom of a rod, it's right on the line. We're still doing the same steady, nice movement, the stitch movement. But whenever we finish, we're gonna have a valley in between those two welds. They're too far apart from each other. Alright guys, so right here, this weld is too far apart from a previous one. This right here is considered a weak spot. This would be pretty much your valley, a little wagon trail. That's no good right here. What is that telling us? It's telling us we need to drop a rod a little bit lower so we can get it to overlap correctly with the previous weld. Alright guys, so we're gonna run our next one right here. We're pretty much gonna do a fast weld, so we can show you guys how it looks when you're welding too fast or when you're stepping out of your puddle a little bit too far. So right here, we're going a little bit way too fast. If you see my rod right here, I'm stepping it out way too much. I'm stepping out way too much. Alright, so if you pay attention right here on this one, we went a little bit way too fast. We were stepping out a lot. Another thing, if you look at our slag, you see our slag is not peeling off. That's pretty much telling you that there's something wrong with your weld. You're either going too fast, or it could happen when you're going too hot, okay? Or too cold, vice versa, but it'll always pretty much, you see this, there's something wrong with your settings on your machine. Alright guys, so this is pretty much the rod that we used on this weld going too fast. We have way too much rod left over. So that's telling you you're going too fast. This is the rod we used when we did a good weld. This is how much you should be looking at if you're welding on a piece of scrap metal at school. If you have a good travel speed, this is what your rod should be looking like. If you're going too fast on your travel speed, you have way too much metal left over on your rod. You didn't deposit enough metal. All right guys, so this is how it looks when you're going a little too fast. If you look at your stitching, it's way too far from each other. And it looks like a little wiggly snake, you know, it's so thin. Then we got an undercut right here on the top. Just be careful with that. That's letting you know we're going too fast. Now we're gonna do our next bead right here, right on top of this one, and we're gonna show you guys how it looks when you're going way too slow and you're stacking up a lot of metal. So right here, we're going way too slow. We're staying in the same spot way too long. If you pay attention to the right side of a rod, to the right side of your screen, you can see a lot of metal stacking up. So whenever you're welding, you want to study your puddle. If you're stacking too much metal or you're going too fast, you want to pay attention to that. Alright, so right here on this one, we're going way too slow. So you can see your weld sagging down right here on this side. So just be careful with that. Make sure you got a good travel speed. Make sure you're not going way too fast or way too slow. You want to pay attention to the right side of your rod, which is your puddle. If you're going way too slow, you'll see that metal build up. Remember, you want to learn how to read your puddle, okay? So now on this next one, we're gonna show you guys how it looks when you're long arcing. Whenever you have your rod too far away from your plate, you'll see a lot of blobs of metal just dripping down, okay? So we're gonna show you on that. So right here, we're running a good bead. Now we're gonna show you how it looks when you're too far away from that plate. So this right here is considered a long arc. You see all those driplets of metal? You have all that arc. You're too far away from that plate. So this is how it should really be looking when you're welding. Okay, you don't want this right here. Once you see that metal dripping from your rod onto your plate, you're too far away. Way too far away. Keep it nice and close. All right, so this is pretty much how it looks when you're long arcing. We started a good weld right here at the start, and then we pretty much pulled away from that plate. I mean, you have no consistency in your weld. We got a bunch of undercut right here on the top. Then we got porosity. We got a whole lot of bad things going on. So just remember, if you long arc, instead of if you think that by long arcing, you're making that weld cool down, you're wrong. You're making it get way, way hotter. Okay, you're not letting the flux do its job. So that's why you're getting a lot of porosity on that weld. So make sure you keep that rod floating on your plate. You don't want to pull away. That's called long arcing, when your rod is too far away from the plate. All right, on this next one, we're gonna show you guys how it looks when you're pushing that rod on into your plate. If you feel your rod stabbing at your plate, you feel it hitting your plate, that's letting you know that you're way too close to it. Back up just a little bit. You don't want to pull off too far away. If you see that your metal dripping off of your rod, that's too far away. So we're going to show you what it looks like when you have a too tight of an arc whenever you're pushing into your plate. So right here we're just starting off good. Right here we're fixing to push into the plate. Right here we're pushing into the plate. You look at your arc, look how tight it is. Now we're gonna back up just a little bit. This is how it should look. This is how it looks when you're stabbing onto the plate. Look at my rod. All right, so right here we started off good. Now right here we started stabbing onto our plate, and we did that as well right here. You see how we don't have no consistency either. You see how it's blobbing down. You will be able to tell the difference on your arc, but especially this is more about a feel. If you feel it stabbing at your plate, that means you're too close. Back up just a little bit. Why? You want that arc to spread out. Okay, so now on this next one, we lowered down our amperage. Now we're gonna show you guys how it looks whenever you're welding way too cold. You'll see the machine have a hard time melting your rod. That's because you're running too cold on that. You see, if I'm trying to weld, but look, it keeps turning off, having a hard time burning the rod. That's telling you that you're running way, way too cold on that. See? Now my rod got stuck on there. Now we're gonna turn it up pretty hot, and then we're gonna show you guys how it looks whenever you're running way too hot. You see the difference? It's melting my rod way, way faster. It seems like I'm long arcing, but the machine is just way too hot. It's just melting my rod just like butter. All right, so on this side, we're running way too cold. Look at the difference of your weld. On the video, it was having a hard time burning the rod. And then right here on this side, we're way, way too hot. You see how at the end of the weld, it has it's gouging into the plate. We have a big crater there. That means it's too hot. Okay, if you feel like it's melting your rod way too fast, that's too hot. And then right here, plus we have undercut on the top side of our weld. So that heat is giving us that undercut. So remember, if you're welding, turn it up and down, mess with your amperage. If you're getting a little bit of undercut, be careful with your speed. Maybe you're running too hot, adjust it. Okay, now on this next one, we're gonna start the weld. We're gonna stop halfway, and then we're gonna show you guys how to do a proper tie-in. Okay, so right here we started our weld. We stopped halfway. We did our tie-in. right here we have a pretty decent tie-in. Over time, you'll start getting better and better at it, but we still have a little bit of undercut, so right there we would turn down our machine a little bit. So keep in mind, your plate is getting hotter and hotter as we're welding on it, so you still gotta adjust to that, okay? So we have a decent tie-in. Now we're gonna show you guys how it looks whenever you don't go far back enough on your tie-in. You pretty much have a little dip in between your two, your welds on your tie-in. Okay, so right here we stopped. We still have undercut right here. I pulled my rod a little bit way too much. Then we did our tie-in, but you see right here we have this big dip. That means we didn't go far enough on our tie-in, okay? So be careful with that. Now we're gonna show you guys on this side how to do a tie-in, but how it looks when you go way too far back, okay? Okay, so right here we're gonna start in the front. We're gonna come back way too slow and we're gonna go way too far back. So right here we're going too slow. See that? We already passed our time. Went too far back. We stacked up way too much metal there. Much better. All right, so right here on this one, we went too slow when we started. So if you go too slow, you're stacking metal as you're moving back. Then right here, you see this big blob. We just went way too far back on our tie-in. So we went too far back, now we got this blob. So just be careful with that. All right guys, so on this one we're gonna show you how to do a proper tie-in. So whenever you start, you always want to start in the front. So say we're welding this way, you want to start in the front of your weld. Why? You want to start in the front of your weld, come back pretty fast. Once you see where you see this weld dip start right here, this is pretty much where you want your tie-in to start. This is where you want to do your half a moon. So you start in the front, come back quick. You want to come back pretty fast. Once you're right here, you want to do that little half a moon, the little hook right here. Make sure your rod is close to your plate. You don't want to be long arcing. Okay, so one of the reasons is if you start right here where your weld ended, you're gonna get a lot of porosity. So how do you avoid that? 70-18 is really tricky. Always start in the front, back drag it, do your tie-in. Once you do your tie-in and you come over this weld, you're gonna burn that porosity out. But if you start right here on the same spot, that porosity is gonna stay there. They're gonna shoot x-rays. You're gonna lose your job on that. So be careful with that. Another thing, once you start in the front, if you come back and you're taking way too long right here, keep in mind you're stacking up metal. You come back, you do your tie-in, and then whenever you're going over that metal, it's way too much metal there. It's just gonna blob up and you're gonna have a really heavy weld, just like the one we did right here on the bottom. So just be careful with that, keep that in mind. And now we're gonna show you guys how to do that tie-in. We're gonna start right here, guys, and then we're gonna head back. Travel back pretty quick. Right here we got a tie-in. We did our hook. Now we're back on doing our movement. All right, guys, so we try to run that tie-in. I'm not gonna lie, that tie-in is a little bit too heavy, but we're gonna make that a learning experience. We're gonna show you guys how to properly grind it. So say right there, if your tie-in didn't come out like you wanted to, the good thing about having a heavy tie-in is you're able to grind it down. Try your best, grind the rest, how to say. If you have a heavy tie-in, you're able to grind it down. If you didn't go far enough and you have a dip in between those two welds, you gotta go back and then add a little bit of weld, and you might be, prone to getting porosity and stuff. So if you have a heavy tie-in, we're gonna show you guys how to fix that, and then we're gonna show it again on how to do a proper tie-in. So whenever you're grinding, you don't wanna grind flat. If you're using your grinding disc and you put it in it flat, you're gonna lose the shape to that weld. So make sure you use the edge of your grinding disc. Try to get good control on that grinder so when you're grinding, you're able to give it that same round shape on your weld. So make sure every time after you grind, make sure you wire wheel it. Don't wait for that weld to cool down. It's easier to get rid of those grind marks whenever your weld is hot. So keep that in mind. So there you go, we grinded down that tie-in. That's how you do it. Okay, so we're gonna start again right here on this side, and then we'll see how that tie-in turns out. Okay, let's give it a shot. Hopefully this time we get a good time for you guys. Start in the front. Come on, Sparky. Start in the front, drag it back, slow it down, do your tie-in, and then we'll get on with our movement. All right, so that's one of our tie-ins right there. We're gonna redo it around this side just so you guys can get another view at it. But we're gonna turn up our temperature just a little bit, 5 amps. See how that helps. Remember, always start in the front, back drag it. So right there, we turned up the machine a little bit harder. Let's see if that helped out. All right, guys. So we did our first tie-in, we did our second tie-in. Just always keep in mind, look at your weld, study your weld, work on your heat. If you're going too fast, too slow, like we always say, you don't want to weld and then at the end be like, hey man, I should have fixed this, fixed that. Try to fix it right after you finish that weld. Just be careful right here on top. We have some arc marks right here on top. Just try to avoid that. You don't want to be welding and then leaving arc marks all over the place. What is arc marks? It's this right here. This right here, this right here. All right, guys, so we had already shot this video last week. We've been having some issues with the arc shots, you know, trying different methods, trying to get the best shot for you guys to actually be able to see the puddle when you're welding. The last video we made didn't come out so good. Now we were like, man, let's invest some money. So we went to the store. I mean, it hurt my pockets a little bit, but I mean, you gotta pay to play. So we invested some money on a little camera, you know, it wasn't that pricey, just around $3,500, $4,000. We bought the camera, we bought new microphones and a whole lot of other stuff. Hopefully you guys like it. We're trying to help you guys out at home as much as we can and grow the channel. So let us know what you guys think about the arc shot. Comment below. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and share. We have a lot of giveaways coming up, so stay tuned. We have a welding machine coming up next. And right now we're giving away a 6-week class or $2,000 cash money. All right, see you on the next one. Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Lino right here at Texas Made Welding Academy. So just to give you guys a little bit of info, we're doing giveaways and stuff like that. So whatever you guys buy from the website, for every $5 you spend, you get 1 entry. So right now what we're giving away is a 6-week welding course. Or if you're not interested in welding, or you're already out there burning rods and making money, whatever you guys buy will get you an entry, and you could also win $2,000 cash. So if you don't want the class, you can get $2,000 cash. After that giveaway, the next thing we got coming up, we got this Miller CST 280. It's a badass little machine. We got a Radical Ops TIG rigs. We got the whole setup, gauges, welding leads, your grinder, a couple of boxes of rods, grinding discs, wire wheels, you name it. So the next giveaway after that one, be able to win all of this stuff that's right here on the table. So whatever you guys buy right now at the moment, you get a free 6-week course or $2,000 cash. And if you buy something right now, you'll get 1 free entry for this bad boy that's coming up next. So stay tuned for those giveaways. It's a really good opportunity for you to get in this giveaway, take this home and practice at home and all that good stuff, guys. So follow us on all social media and stay tuned for the next ones.